All right, chapter 5 of Wayside School, Beneath the Cloud of Doom. Eric, and what's his name? Oh, that's right, Eric. There are 3 Erics in Mrs. Jewell's class: Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and the other one, who everyone always forgets, Eric Ovens. Eric Fry is strong and fast. He's usually the first one chosen when picking teams. Eric Bacon is funny, clever, and just a little bit sneaky. Everyone in Mrs. Jewell's class likes him, but no one completely trusts him. Eric Ovens is kind, quiet, and 100% trustworthy. Sadly, that kind of person is often overlooked. But not today, he thought as he sat at his desk, patiently waiting for Mrs. Jewell to finish taking attendance. Today would be his day of glory. In his pocket was a plastic bag with 83 nail clippings. 2 numbers had been written on the blackboard, 71 and 2,677. So far, the class had collected a total of 2,677 nail clippings. 71 were the most brought in by any one kid. They didn't just have to be toenails, fingernails counted too. Eric Ovens took his bag out of his pocket and placed it on his desk. "How many you got?" whispered Kathy, who sat next to him. Eric didn't want to jinx his big day by saying the number aloud. Besides, he knew Kathy would only say something mean or mock him. Mrs. Jewell closed her attendance book. "Anyone have any nail clippings this morning?" Eric Ovens raised his hand. "Yes, Eric," said Mrs. Jewell. Eric Ovens quietly pushed his chair back, but before he could get up, he saw Eric Fry already making his way to the front of the room. 40, Eric Fry declared proudly. Eric Fry had kept his hand in a fist all morning. Everyone thought he was just trying to be tough. Now he opened his fist and let 40 nail clippings fall into the collection bucket. "Well done, Eric," said Mrs. Jewell. Everyone clapped their hands. Eric Ovens smiled as he clapped his hands too. 83 was more than double 40. Eric Fry did the math on the board. 2,677 plus 40 equals 2,717. "Halfway to $1,000,000, cheered Stephen. "Not quite," Allison told him. "Anyone else?" asked Mrs. Jewell. Again, Eric Ovens raised his hand, but Eric Bacon had already hopped out of his seat and was headed toward the front of the room. He handed Mrs. Jewell a plastic bag full of nail clippings. 349, he declared triumphantly. The class went wild. Sherry gasped. Stephen fell out of his chair. Eric Bacon danced around Mrs. Jewell's desk like a football player who had scored a touchdown. Mrs. Jewell was skeptical of the spectacle. "I could count them," she warned. Eric stopped dancing. "Go ahead," he challenged her. Mrs. Jewell stared Eric Bacon in the eye. Eric Bacon stared right back. Mrs. Jewell dumped the bag on her desk and divided the clippings into 4 piles. She asked Damien, Allison, and John to help. They each took a pile, and then Mrs. Jewell added their totals together. 349, she announced, just as Eric said. Again, everyone cheered, and Eric Bacon continued his victory dance. "How did you get so many?" Mrs. Jewell asked him. Eric B. stopped dancing. "I went door to door asking my neighbors," he said. Everyone laughed. Leslie had sold wrapping paper door to door, but she couldn't imagine asking people for their toenails. "It's easier than asking for money," said Eric. Everyone was happy to donate. He erased the number 71 and put 349 in its place. Then he did the math. 2,717 plus 349 equals 3,066. "Almost $1,000,000, Stephen called out. "Not even close," muttered Allison. Mrs. Jewell told Eric Bacon to take a Tootsie Roll Pop from her coffee can. He took one. Then, when she wasn't looking, he took another. "Anyone else?" asked Mrs. Jewell. Eric Ovens sat glumly at his desk. "Raise your hand," urged Kathy. "Why bother?" he muttered. Kathy got up from her seat and stood next to him. She grabbed Eric's arm and raised it for him. "Eric Ovens brought a whole lot," she announced. "Bring them on up," said Mrs. Jewell. He had no choice. "It's just 83, he said, and then emptied his bag into the nail bucket. "That's the second most ever," shouted Kathy. She started clapping. Amazingly, everyone else clapped too. They were still clapping as he did the math on the board. 3,066 plus 83 equals 3,149. "That's closer to $1,000,000, exclaimed Stephen. Everyone cheered. Even Allison couldn't argue with that. That's nice that they ended up being so sweet to him, and he felt bad because he wanted to have the most, but even though he didn't, he had the second most, and his friends celebrated that. That's kind. I like that. All right, chapter 6 is oppositosis. Eric Ovens wasn't the only one who had noticed that Kathy had become nice. Others, too, began to notice her odd behavior. I like your picture, Kathy told BB. What's wrong with it, BB asked. Nothing, said Kathy. It's perfect. You're very talented. It took BB a moment to realize that Kathy hadn't insulted her. Mrs. Jules also noticed the change. Kathy, will you come here, please? She asked. Kathy approached her teacher's desk. Yes, Mrs. Jules, she asked. Mrs. Jules smiled. You've been doing very well, Kathy, she said. I've noticed a real improvement in all your work and in your attitude. That must be because you're such a good teacher, said Kathy. Well, thank you, said Mrs. Jules, but there's a tiny little problem. I'm having a hard time reading your homework. What do you mean? Look at it, said Mrs. Jules, showing Kathy her most recent homework assignment. What's wrong with it? Asked Kathy. First thing we learned in psychiatrist school, Dr. Pickle said as he patted DJ on the head. My hiccups are all gone, DJ told Kathy. Who cares? Kathy grumbled. Would you mind stepping inside my office, young lady? Asked Dr. Pickle. If you haven't noticed, this is a flashback. See on right here, those are it means, oh, it's a flashback. But he's a sicko, said Kathy, pointing to DJ. Please, said Dr. Pickle. She entered the counselor's office. That beard is really ugly. I guess your face must be even worse, huh? Dr. Pickle didn't get angry. He just stroked his beard and said, very interesting. Kathy sniffed. Smells like pickles, she commented. Very interesting indeed, the counselor said, and then asked her to sit down. Kathy sat on the couch. Lumpy, she complained. I'm going to try a little experiment, said Dr. Pickle. I'm going to say a word, and then I want you to say the first word that pops into your head. Stupid, said Kathy. I haven't started yet, said Dr. Pickle. Sloppy, said Kathy. Dr. Pickle realized he had better hurry up and get started. Cold, he began. Hot, Kathy replied. Hard, soft, skinny, fat. This is kind of fun, isn't it, Kathy? Asked Dr. Pickle. No, it's boring, said Kathy. Worse than I thought, said Dr. Pickle. I studied your condition in psychiatrist school. I'm afraid you have a bad case of oppositosis. No, I don't. You do. Dr. Pickle stroked his beard. Unfortunately, there was no known cure for oppositosis. Other psychiatrists had tried to help their patients learn to be kind and think positively. Dr. Pickle knew that would never work on Kathy. He had his own theory, however. He could try to turn her opposites into double opposites. He opened his desk drawer and took out his pickle stone and chain. Kathy watched the green stone as it gently swung back and forth. She fell asleep on the count of 5. Can you hear me, Kathy? He asked. And I can smell you too, she replied. You are looking into a mirror, he told her. I'm looking into a mirror, Kathy repeated, eyes closed. Tell me what you see. I see a beautiful girl with black hair, she said, and I see a funny-looking man with a pointy beard. Very good, said Dr. Pickle. Now I want you to reach out and touch the mirror. Kathy slowly moved her arm. But as you try to touch it, said Dr. Pickle, you'll discover the mirror isn't solid. Your hand will go right through it. Kathy stuck her hand out farther. That's weird, she said. Now stand up and walk through the mirror. Kathy stood up. She took one step, then another. She hesitated for a moment and then took one last step. Amazing, she exclaimed. You are on the other side of the mirror, said Dr. Pickle. What do you see? Kathy looked around. Nice office, she said. She sniffed. Smells nice, too. I'm glad you like it, said Dr. Pickle. Would you like to sit on the couch? Kathy sat back down. Very comfortable, she noted. When I count to 3, you will wake up, but you will be on the other side of the mirror. 1, 2, 3. Kathy opened her eyes. How do you feel? He asked her. Fine, thanks, said Kathy. How are you? Very well, thank you, said Dr. Pickle. Do you mind if we continue with our little experiment? Sounds like fun, said Kathy. Happy, said Dr. Pickle. Smile, said Kathy. Smart, said Dr. Pickle. Mrs. Jules, said Kathy. Friend, said Dr. Pickle. DJ, said Kathy. Dr. Pickle led her to the door. Thank you, Dr. Pickle, she said, shaking his hand. You are very wise, and I like your beard. back to present time. What's wrong with my homework? Asked Kathy. It's written backwards, said Mrs. Jules. Every sentence, every word, every letter, even the numbers are backward. Looks normal to me, said Kathy. Do you want me to do it over? Mrs. Jules said, no, that's all right, Kathy. I'm just happy to see you doing so well. I'll figure it out. Kathy smiled and then returned to her seat. That sentence is written backwards. See the last sentence over there? It's written backwards. Ha ha ha. So she's seeing everything in a mirror. So when she does her homework, she writes everything backwards because it looks normal to her, but it looks like it's in a mirror to everyone else. It's backwards. Okay, let's have, for an extra credit point in social studies, let's do beard. Beard. See you guys later.